let's talk about something that hit the timeline earlier this evening during the tail end of the afternoon games. A guy that's been in the landscape of, I guess, shitting on the Jaguars and not being a fan, and not really being a fan, I would say, but having some harsh, critical analysis on this team and also Trevor Lawrence. And I'll say this before I get into my spiel with this, man. I have a very hard time following and listening to said former athletes in football or basketball to talk about the game. Granted, I know they played this game at a very high level. They were one of the 1%ers to make it to the league. Specifically speaking in football right now, of course, right? Rare commodity. 1% type athletes. Right? Future Hall of Famers, some of them. But in certain aspects, I feel like as if when they speak about the game, it's talked about in a negative tone too much, that they allow individual biases or just lazy analysts and takes filter how they watch said teams. Earlier today, Richard Sherman was asked by a Jaguar fan, because he's been very quiet about the Jaguars as of late. And I'll pull up on the screen for you guys can watch and see. For guys, people watching on YouTube, if not, you can head to my Twitter and just scroll down my page. You'll see it. I kind of get it up here. Okay, let's go full screen with this. So earlier today, Richard Sherman was asked about, why haven't you been speaking on Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, right? Because he has so much to say during the offseason, during the early parts of this year when they were 4-3, and also a lot last year, right? It was always Trevor not living up to the contract, Trevor playing bad, this team being bad, Doug Peterson may not have been the issue, so on and so forth. Now that the Jaguars fired Trent Baalke, they brought in Liam Cohn with James Gladstone. Is it the right answer? Is it going to work out, right? Is it going to be, whose fault can they blame if Trevor still ends up being bad, right? And granted, I think all those were very fair questions to say or to ask and very fair statements to make. I couldn't debate those at the time, right? But at one point this year, I think it was during the Rams and Jazz game back in London earlier this year, he said that pretty much on the lines of, after watching a game like this, I found it so crazy and hard to believe that Trevor makes this much more money than Matthew Stafford when they're obviously two different quarterbacks. One is obviously better than the other. Granted, okay, cool, whatever. Pile on more, because the Jaguars are getting their brains beat in, and Trevor was not playing good that game. All right. But since then, he's been very quiet. Granted, okay, you don't have to speak about the Jaguars. I get that. But even quiet on your own podcast when you are doing weekly recaps, like week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, so on and so forth, right? So you're speaking on a lot of teams in the league. Not saying you watch every team, and not saying you have to speak on teams that aren't winning, but you're watching and recapping games week in and week out. And of course, during this time of the year, you are talking about teams that can go for a deep playoff run, teams you have no faith in, so on and so forth, right? But you have been radio silent. So a fan of the Jaguars asked today, if you guys can see it, David Rims MTL on Twitter asked, interesting how you suddenly stopped tweeting about Trevor Lawrence. Richard says, I stopped watching them altogether weeks ago. Keep in mind the Jaguars are on a 5-game winning streak. They've been one of the hotter stories in football, and they're also one of the hotter teams in football. David said, I was just chirping, but what kind of NFL analyst isn't watching a first-place team this time of the year, coming off a 4-win season as well? I agree. right? Because especially for a content creator myself, when I speak about my TikTok videos, when I go live, I'm talking about things that are in the moment. I'm not saying I'm speaking about the 2-12 Giants with all due respect. I'll talk about them later, or the Raiders, or the Titans, right? Because they're not the talk of the town right now, respectfully. But then Richard goes on to say, one, that doesn't need to speak about that team. They aren't on our TNF schedule and aren't the target audience for my podcast. Cool. Stop right there. He's saying the Jaguars weren't on the TNF schedule. I agree. They're not. As an employee for Amazon Prime Thursday Night Football, of course, you have to study and film work on teams you're covering. I get that 100%. Now, granted, from what I heard and remember last week against the Thursday Night Football slate, forgot who played, but in slates, especially when they are games where they are talking about things happening around the NFL, playoff races, both AFC and NFC, it gets brought up. And if I'm not mistaken, last week they brought up the AFC playoff race. And of course, the list was right there of teams that are sitting in first place, second place, third place, fourth place, sixth place, so on and so forth, and in the hunt. Every team got talked about in them top categories that were solidified playoff seeding teams. Yet the Jaguars didn't get spoke on. That was across the entire TNF broadcast. Cool. That goes back to what Liam talks about. We ain't going to get the respect. Fine. But this is where I have a problem with. And I'm sorry, as a fan, NFL content creator, as a small NFL analyst myself, I have a problem with this because he goes on to say they aren't the target audience of his podcast. If they win a playoff game, that will give reason to watch their tape. What? On your own individual podcast on YouTube, where you're doing weekly recaps on teams and talking about sad things going around the NFL, you can spend a brief moment talking about the number one team in the AFC, and I'm 100% sure you are speaking on the Texans. I'm 100% sure you spoke on the Colts within these last 5 weeks. I'm not understanding. And it said you say you if they win a playoff game, that would give reason to watch their tape. What? They have to win a playoff game for you to sit down and actually watch some tape. I'm not saying you have to watch the all 22 and scout position by position and grade and figure out what coverages they're playing in zone or what routes are being ran between receivers and what running back is. I'm not asking for that. I don't think fans are asking for that either. It takes for them to win a playoff game for you to say to watch their tape and you speak on them. That sounds so fucking stupid. It's a cop-out. But anyways, it gets even worse. Because at first, I said whatever. Richard is being Richard, man. He's been a weirdo all year about this Jaguar and a lot of other teams too. I'm pretty sure they can vouch for this on how he just talks about these teams in this way. Anyways, David goes on to say 10-14 versus Broncos next week, who currently sit at 11-2, is going to be the game of the week on Fox. Tom Brady's calling this game. You think Tom Brady hasn't watched the Jaguar game this year? Highlights? Clips? Okay. 10-14 versus Broncos next week, not a marquee matchup. Question mark. In quotations, by the way, marquee matchup. Of all the teams to be a hater of, a small market team you barely played against just seems random as F. Richard says, which is insane. But I'm glad he said this. The fans have pushed me to dislike them. Really have no care either way about most teams, but when the fans are obnoxious, that changes things. So I said, okay. This is the NFL analyst speaking like this. Sherman is letting the opinions of fans dictate his ability to thoroughly do his damn job. Then I followed up and it kind of went viral at 1.9 views. I said, I can't believe Richard Sherman just admitted that. That's truly embarrassing. It is 100% embarrassing. Without question, you have fans defending him. Some are. I don't know why. And then, I made a joke because Trevor Sikkema, PFF, he watches a lot of games, especially good teams, right? The Jaguars are a good team this year, all right? I would think so. He said, "I'll be watching every snap." I called her and I said, "You think Richard Sherman will?" Because obviously, Richard said, "Bro, that is so damn lazy, in my opinion, bro. That is the laziest, most embarrassing thing I've ever heard a analyst say." And granted, I know a lot of them don't watch film. I could tell by the way they talk. Shady McCoy, LaShawn McCoy, he said this week, and I really can't stand when he talks about the game. And I really hate that he was forced on FS1 to speak about the NBA landscape because he knows nothing about that side of the game either. Not enough, in my opinion. But he said on his nightcap thing with Acho, I forgot the name of it. I'm sorry, but I forgot the name of it. But I gotta pull up his tweet too because it was insane. Let me see. Let me go to my bookmarks. Where we at? Let's get out of here. Bookmarks. I bookmarked. Okay, yes, it was on his speakeasy with Emmanuel Acho. He said if Shedeur Sanders beats Caleb Williams, he's better than Caleb Williams. He said that last week. Granted, the Bears came out there and dismantled the Browns, and Shedeur Sanders played terrible. But in my opinion, the performance by Shedeur Sanders should not dictate if he is better than Caleb Williams or not, because he is not. One game was not going to decipher that. One game was not going to decide that. But you have players that speak about the game and give these shitty hot takes and say stuff like that and wonder why. Anyways, I don't like that. I don't like it's whatever with Shady McCoy, but more so Richard Sherman. You have people out there that really take their job serious as content creators, NFL analysts, media reps that take their game serious. They take their job serious and are talking about one of the hotter teams in the NFL right now. You don't have to be talking about the Giants, the Raiders, Titans, the Saints. I'm not saying, because everyone's saying, well, you can't watch all 32 teams, and maybe the fan base was being toxic in his comment section, so maybe that's why he dialed back talking about it. Bro, what? Dallas Cowboys are one of the more toxic fan bases all in the NFL. He's been talking about Shedeur Sanders. That's a fan base that is extremely toxic right now. Save the toxic talk. Save the small market talk. Oh, the Jaguars, they're a small market team. No one cares about them. Someone said last year no one's cared about the Vikings when they were winning games. Shut the hell up. Yes, they were talking about the Vikings. Sam Darnold was one of the better stories in football last year. Shut that shit up. You sound stupid defending this. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And I hope this tweet gets enough traction for where Richard Sherman has to come out and speak on it and say, or even talk about, okay, like, oh, I just dropped the thing I talked about the Jaguar fans and da-da-da-da-da, like, you know, it's an annoying fan base. And he may not. But I feel like that is extremely embarrassing, man. That is extremely embarrassing to admit that you don't watch tape. Not even do you watch tape, but you don't watch current events. What are you watching then? Richard, what are you watching then? Talking about that doesn't cover my region of the podcast. You're not a team-centric podcast. You're not a Niners only podcast. You're not a Seahawks only podcast. You're not a Buccaneers only podcast. You talk about all teams, all quarterbacks around the landscape. And it's not that we are asking Richard to give a full 1 hour breakdown of the Jaguars. I'm not even asking him to even own up to his wrongdoings of talking about the Jaguars, because they were fair takes. They were honest takes. And you can continue talking about that. Well, I see the Jaguars doing their thing out there. I see what they're doing right now. They're putting together wins, but I can't trust them. That's fair. Say that. Trevor Lawrence is stacking games, but I just still can't trust it. Or about time, Trevor, because I've been seeing that too. About time Trevor plays like he's supposed to be playing. I would respect that too. But the fact that you threw stones, threw haymakers, and now you find yourself unable to speak about said things because of a fan base. What? Little old Jaguar fan base is so toxic in your comments that you can't spend time talking about them? I was talking about the team briefly. What the fuck, bro? But shout out to John Rivers on Twitter. He made a great statement, a great tweet. He said that because I said that, are you gonna? Because I commented on the Trevor Sikkema thing about him questioning if he's gonna watch the game next week, right? And John said, I think he said something like along the lines of no or something like that. And I said it's shameful. And he was like, yeah, but if the Broncos win, he'll be circling back to say, oh, well, this is why I can't talk about the Jaguars, so on and so forth. And I was like, yeah, he's going to exactly do that. He's going to try the victory lap late as hell. And also, if Trevor plays a bad game, he'll be saying, well, this is why I couldn't trust Trevor. It's why I kept to say, that's why I remained silent. It's Bush League. It's stupid. It's not consistent. It's lazy. You're not doing your damn job. I can't take your opinions seriously. Can't watch your show seriously. Never did, but it makes me not even want to go watch the show because you're not 100% honest. That tells me right there you are lazy on your job. And I'm not asking you, no fan is asking you to cover all 32 teams. But it's a simple fact of now that we know you don't watch these games for real, that when we hear you talk about these games going forward, it's going to go in one year at the other because you're just watching the timeline or catching up very late. Like, bro, man, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm making a big deal about it. I don't know. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Jaguars fan, but I think that is pretty shameful for any fan base that he is, relinquishing that type of statement to. If the Giants were, I would have said the Giants because they're a marquee team. They're from New York. I would say the Titans in our own division. If they were 10-4 this year after being with the first overall pick last year and had a 10-4 record, and they were first place in the AFC South, and he was saying stuff like, well, I don't want to talk about them because their fan base is toxic and obnoxious. Stupid, bro. Needless to say, like Liam Cohen said last week in the presser, respect ain't coming. Bottom line, it ain't. All right? And that's fine. But when you hear stuff like that, bro, I can't rock with. I can't respect you as an analyst. And honestly, I look at you differently as a man because you out here having these takes about certain things and you can't even simply just follow through with just commenting on them or readdressing them.